It's draft night and potentially trade night for the New Orleans Pelicans. I'll give you my prediction on a Brandon Ingram trade, who the Pelicans draft at 21, and then go rapid fire with draft prospects you need to know. It's a draft day episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Wednesday, draft day. And that means maybe deadline day, maybe trade day for Brandon Ingram here. We're going to cover it all. It's predictions. I'm going to tell you what I think the Brandon Ingram trade is. I'm going to tell you who I think the Pelicans will draft at 21. We're going to go rapid fire on draft prospects you might not know enough about, but should. I'm going to play some more videos like we did in yesterday's show. So, of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast covering this team like nobody else does. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are on YouTube as well, where there's over 10,000 Pelicans fans. And don't forget, right after the Pelicans make a pick or trade, whatever happens with the team, we're going to go live immediately on YouTube, or like 2 minutes after on YouTube, to talk about it. And then we're going to go a little bit longer, do the bonus part of the show, where I'm going to give you a super secret trade target that no one has talked about yet, but I think we need to kind of keep in the back of our minds. So tease in a little bit what it's going to look like tonight. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down and the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but it's summer. FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So let's dive right into predictions here. In his Substack, Mark Stein said he expects a Brandon Ingram trade this week, which basically means like tonight, tomorrow. The draft is separated into 2 days now. First round on Wednesday, second round on Thursday. So you can get a little bit of a break, look at your players, look at the draft board, and then maybe get a deal done. He thinks it'll happen. Excited to find out. So here's my prediction of the main pieces in the trade. The little pieces I don't think matter as much because you can kind of figure all of that out, and they're relatively ancillary here. My prediction on a Brandon Ingram trade is to Atlanta for Dejounte Murray and one of their centers, either Clint Capella or Onyeka Okongwu, with Okongwu being the guy that I would like them to get. I think he's better and cheaper than Capella. While I would prefer Trae Young, I get this from a variety of reasons, for a variety of reasons here. You know, Dejounte Murray just kind of seems to fit the Pelicans, the way their organization operates, the way they think, the way they evaluate players a little bit more. He's got better size. They're a relatively small backcourt anyway. At 6'5", that's important. He's been a good defender, though he hasn't been a good defender in Atlanta. But I think that's something that would come back to him pretty easily, particularly playing in a good defensive system here, playing alongside a guy like Herb Jones. And this is a guy that has been kind of a point guard that has led a team and done a really good job doing all of that. You know, this past season, he averaged 6.4 assists. The year before that, 6.1. But when he was the last time kind of running his team in San Antonio, when he was an all-star, 9.2 assists, 21.1 points per game. Dude can score. One of the other things that you really like about him is his three-point shot attempts have gone up every year. Contrast that to Brandon Ingram, where those have gone down. You know, started with 0.6, 0.4, 1.7, 3.0, 4.3 attempts per game his final season in San Antonio, 5.2 his first season in Atlanta, 7.1 last year on 36.3%. He's close to a 40% spot-up shooter, so those kick-out passes, Zion drives, kicks it out to Murray. He's around 40% from three there. Those are pretty good numbers. They're not elite numbers by any stretch, but that's better than some other guys that you could go and get. I don't think he has the court gravity of a Trae Young, but one of the things we've said is if Zion's also handling the ball a lot for you, you want guys that will make opponents pay. Murray is the type of player that will make opponents play. The other thing that really is to keep in mind with this is he's cheaper. Cheaper in a variety of different ways. Well, two different ways. His extension kicks in next year. It's significantly less than Trae Young makes. $25.5 million next season culminates with a player option at just $32 million, $31.6 million in 2027, 2028. That means that all of those years that he for sure would be on New Orleans, he's under $30 million per year. Contrast that to what you would pay Brandon Ingram or Trae Young making the $40, $50 million deal. He's cheaper. That's an unfortunate reality of rooting for this franchise. Again, one of two teams that has never paid the luxury tax in their franchise's history. They might just be under a mandate to get the cheaper guy. It sucks. That's not fun to talk about. It's not fun to think about. It's just the reality of the situation. That, and I'm not saying that it is, could be a factor into this. Again, but I think the bigger things are the size. I don't think you'll need to, he's also cheaper, and you probably don't need to give up the 21st overall pick in this. I think it would be like Brandon Ingram and a guy like Dyson Daniels, maybe, something like that in a trade to Atlanta. I don't think maybe Larry Nance Jr. I don't think you need to give up a ton. And that means you have flexibility to make other moves later, potentially move CJ McCollum, look at bringing him off of the bench if you want to get Trey Murphy into the starting lineup. And those are your options, right? Like you would have a lineup that could be would be Dejounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Herb or Trey, Zion, and whoever you're starting center in a Okongwu, or, a guy you draft or a guy you sign in free agency, Andre Drummond, someone else. It's not bad. Like, I think that's around, a slightly better team just due to a better fit with Murray than you were this past season. They won 49 games. Does that get you to 52? If it does, that elevates you, puts you in a better spot than you were this year. It's not the biggest, sexiest move out there. I wouldn't call this, like a screaming difference maker of a move that I do think Trae Young or Donovan Mitchell or some other guys would give you. But it's a relatively safe move that likely won't backfire on you, that is cost effective. Make of that what you will. Give me your opinion in the comments down below. But it just seems like, the Pelicans like Murray better than Young. They went after him at the trade deadline. That was well reported. They'd probably make a run at him again here, and I think Atlanta knows they've got to make some sort of change, some sort of move, and I think that's going to be something that they keep in mind and that ultimately leads to this deal getting done, because there's just too much sense to be made between these two teams making a trade. But say the Pelicans don't give up the 21st overall pick, or a Brandon Ingram deal doesn't get done right now. They're drafting at 21. Let's look at who I think they're going to pick. I teased it. It's in the sidebar here if you're watching on YouTube, so it's not like a surprise. It's Yves Missi from Baylor. I'll get into why, but also there's some other options, guards that we have not talked about because I didn't think they were going to be available at 21. They very well may be available at 21 based on a mock draft that I was a part of. We're going to look at that. I want to look at Rob Dillingham. I want to look at Jared McCain from Duke, Rob Dillingham from Kentucky. I think there's a chance one or both of those guys could fall, and that might be a game changer for the New Orleans Pelicans. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by my favorite eBay Motors, and they're my favorite because my cars run because of eBay Motors. Everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. I want my old Corvette to run. I told y'all I needed to put a new window on it. You know how hard it is to get a piece of glass, the glass window for a near 50-year-old car? Those places that come out to replace the glass for you won't do it. You got to go to eBay Motors, and they're going to have the part for you. Even something that's like kind of obscure like that. Maybe you just want more utility on your vehicle. Put a roof rack on it. They have it at eBay Motors. LED headlights to help you see better at night. That's great. All of that at eBay Motors. When you're into speed, power, or style, they have you covered with over 122 million parts, so you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Trust me, I've been there where you put a part on your car that you tried to order super cheap somewhere else. You're not really sure what you're getting. And all of a sudden now your hood won't close and you got to take that part off, and then you've got to get the right part. It's going to fit with eBay Motors or you get your money back. And I shop there because I'm not broke, because their prices are good. You're burning rubber, not cash. So keep your vehicle on the road over at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, tell your friends about Locked On Pelicans too. And don't forget the live show tonight. The second a draft pick gets made for the New Orleans Pelicans. We will be live breaking it all down so you know what's going on with this team, what it means for the team. I think that's important as well going forward and what the next steps are going to be. We got more coverage later in the week too about free agency. I want to look at Trey Murphy's contract. All of those things are going to be kind of the next pieces of business for New Orleans. So we'll look at that, get you started for free agency and everything. No chance that we are slowing down here on the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now to catch up on the draft, make your second listen today, Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the yelling. Get just the sports info you want. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. They're going to have all the draft coverage here. You're seeing on Locked On Pelicans, I did it the other day where I played some clips from some of our draft experts, and we're about to break into more. I have something like 10, 11 lined up for you here. Pelicans on the clock at 21. Who are they taking? They're taking Yves Missi from Baylor. That is the name that they've both been linked to recently when some of the other names that we like, Khalil Ware, Zach Edey, Donon Holmes II, are going higher in the draft. And more on that in a second here because I have a very interesting mock draft for you that I trust tremendously. But I think that if those guys are off the board, they're going to end up going with Yves Missi. They've been linked to him. He came in for a workout. I think that's someone they like as a prototypical big that you could pair next to Zion Williamson, a la Jackson Hayes, who didn't work out, and they're taking another crack at it again. He doesn't have some of those motor issues either. Still a very raw prospect, but look, there's a lot of potential there. So here's a clip on Yves Missi.
Look out, NBA Rims, because here comes Yves Missi. I'm Cam Stewart from the Locked On Baylor podcast, and we are talking about the 7-foot freshman sensation, Yves Missi, who was just a terror to the Rims in the Big 12 this year, averaging over 11 points and 6 rebounds a game while ranking 3rd in the conference in block shots en route to a Big 12 all-defensive team. I think he can develop into a more polished player like a Nick Claxton type, but the comparison that sticks out to me is Clint Capella, that rim runner and rim protector. Will he have an immediate impact? It might take a little bit to get to the physicality of the NBA level, but I see him as an elite rim runner in the years to come. For more on Yves Missi and all things Baylor, follow and subscribe to Locked On Baylor on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, there you go. There's reasons to think that he'll work out in the NBA. I think it's going to take a little bit. I think it's going to take a little while. I don't see him contributing a ton the first, second year. I think he's going to foul too much. I think he's going to have trouble staying vertical. But you see the potential. You see why they're interested in drafting him. So that's ultimately who I think they're going to end up taking in this draft, assuming they stay at 21 and things break a certain way. But things might not break a certain way. That's what's interesting about this draft. We don't know who's going #1 overall yet. The Atlanta Hawks have not really telegraphed that. Alex Sarr, at one point the presumed #1 overall pick has not worked out for them. That kind of opens the door for things to be a little bit different too in what we were maybe thinking it might be. They might go with Zachary Risachet, and that changes things somewhat when it comes to the draft. And when you look at some of these mock drafts, I, as much as I like mock drafts and they're fun, and it's one person kind of doing the picks for every team in the league, and their national media, they don't cover the team kind of in a boots on the ground way that I do with the Pelicans, that others do with the Pelicans, or that others do with the team that they cover. And that's where I think you can fall into some of these traps with these mock draft roundups where it's everyone's just a lot of groupthink there, and they don't have some of the insight that you're maybe looking for. So I love when we do just an internal locked on mock draft. We did one for this 2024 draft. The Atlanta Hawks did take Alex Sarr one. We're going to run through it. I'm going to list these names out fast because I think it's kind of interesting. Alex Sarr went 1, Donovan Cling 2, Reed Shepard 3, Risa Shea is 4, Matthias Buzelis is 5, Stephon Castle, Cody Williams, Dalton Connect, Saloon is there, Ron Holland, Khalil Ware, is 11 to the Bulls. 12, because this is where it gets interesting, is Donon Holmes the second to the Thunder. The Memphis Grizzlies traded in this, and I don't love trades in these. Zach Edey at 13. Those are the names the Pelicans are hoping will fall to them in some capacity, I think. And they went and were done by the 13th overall pick. There was a run on some of these big men out there. That means that other players fall. Kyle Filipowski, more on him in the next segment, went 20. And that meant that guys like Rob Dillingham or Jared McCain were available. These are two pretty elite guards. Rob Dillingham out of Kentucky, Jared McCain out of Duke. I want to play a clip on each of those and talk about those for a minute, because if one or both of those fall to New Orleans, they need to consider taking them. I was going to take Filipowski here. He went 20 to Cleveland. Rob Dillingham is there. This is a guy that I think is largely overall thought of as a top 10 pick, but if teams are drafting for need in a weaker draft and he falls, this is a steal for the Pelicans. Same with Jared McCain. Here's a little bit more info on Dillingham.
Rob Dillingham from the Kentucky Wildcats just may be the best ball handler in this year's draft class. Hi, my name is Lance Dahl, host of the Locked On Kentucky podcast, and Dillingham was incredible for the Wildcats coming off the bench a season ago, averaging over 15 points per game while shooting 44% from beyond the arc in just 23 minutes per contest. He was electric, especially in the clutch. Dillingham, I think, would be best served playing point guard, starting point guard for whichever NBA team ends up selecting him. I liken him to a player like Kobe White or maybe even Kemba Walker, just with his confidence, his size at the point guard position, his explosiveness, and of course, his ability to handle the basketball. For more on Dillingham and Kentucky basketball, you can subscribe to the Locked On Kentucky podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
I mean, if that guy's available, it's tough not to take him. Now, I don't love that he is very, very undersized. 6'1", 165 pounds, but he is a bucket getter and can give you that offensive creation that you really need. He's also a good three-point shooter and can set teammates up too. He can work off ball as well. He at least tries on the defensive side of the ball, but I don't think he's ever going to be a good defender because he's undersized, and that's probably why he slipped in this mock draft to 21. But that's a lot of talent there for someone that I think a lot of people view as a top 10 pick. If he's there, I think the Pelicans potentially need to take a chance on him. Same thing with Jared McCain, Duke, freshman. This is maybe one of the best shooters in the draft, if not the best shooter. One of the comps I've seen with him is he won't be as good as Steph Curry, but he's going to be significantly better than Seth Curry. I don't know. That sounds pretty good to me on that. Here's a little bit more on Jared McCain.
Duke Blue Devils freshman sensation Jared McCain might be the best shooter in this NBA draft. I am Alex Dono from Locked On ACC. While he doesn't have the best length at 6'2", McCain makes up for so much of that with his high basketball IQ, his sharp shooting, and his crafty finishing at the rim. Shot 41.4% from beyond the arc last year, played over 31 minutes per game, averaging 14.3 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 steal per contest. McCain, by the way, he's got 3 million followers on TikTok, so he's multi-talented, but he's all business when it comes to basketball. That's his number one priority. The ACC All-Rookie and All-ACC Honorable Mention can help an NBA team immediately with his shooting. A common NBA comp for him is Seth Curry. For more on Jared McCain and all things ACC, follow and subscribe to Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
I mean, if he's available, it's something you got to think about. And, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Would you pick Dillingham or McCain? Which one? And if, say, Khalil Ware is there, someone that I think is a big favorite for Pelicans fans, would you draft Dillingham or McCain over Ware? I think those are important questions to ask. Here's the other thing to consider if either of those two guys fall to the Pelicans at 21, and that's how does that maybe change a Brandon Ingram trade? We just talked about trading him for Dejounte Murray. Do you need to trade for Dejounte Murray if you get one of those two guys? Do you potentially keep Brandon Ingram then, getting him kind of that point guard shooter that he says he'd like to play alongside? How does that change the dynamic of this? That's why this draft is so interesting. And if it goes kind of an unpredictable way, and it easily could, well, then all of a sudden that's a game changer for this team and opens up a number of different possibilities for them. That's why we're going to really be keeping an eye on everything in this draft. So coming up next, other names, though. I don't think this scenario is necessarily going to go, but I just want to get you caught up on a couple of guys. Kyle Filipowski, Ware again, Holmes, Edey. I want you to know about Tyler Kolek, Tristan da Silva, Jonathan Mogbo, and a couple of others here that we'll talk about with more clips from our Locked On experts to give you their expert analysis here. That's coming up here next, like a lightning round, rapid fire draft prospects coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about FanDuel because, yes, the NBA is over, but we all love sports, and we never want them to stop. So the playoffs are done for the NBA. There's fewer games, but FanDuel is going to keep the sports going whenever you or I want, and all you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that you or I are in the mood. Because this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. MLB is going on right now, right? And FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer with daily boosts and bonuses all day long. Again, FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and the official sportsbook of Locked On. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this team, giving you insight you can't get anywhere else, utilizing the power of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day here. For your second listen, we're going to mix it up. Locked On NBA. I'm actually on there every Wednesday. So if you go and listen to Locked On NBA, you'll see me on there again. I'm with our Locked On Hawks host hosting this one, giving you kind of like a bigger general overview of the draft. There's actually, we haven't recorded it yet when I'm recording this, but I have it planned out. We're going to even talk about Brandon Ingram trades on there too. I want someone else's opinion on that sort of thing. But what are the Hawks going to do with #1? How is this draft going to go? We're going to get into all of that. So if you want some more comprehensive draft coverage that's not just solely Pelicans related, go give Locked On NBA, where you'll see me on Wednesdays. Make that your second listen today. So it's lightning round time for prospects. One guy that I think is kind of getting forgotten about is Kyle Filipowski, center from Duke. Here's the report on him.
Duke big man Kyle Filipowski benefited from playing a second season with the Blue Devils, but now he's ready to begin his NBA career. I am Alex Dono from Locked On ACC. Filipowski is a proven commodity as a 7-footer who can flex his game out to the perimeter. He enjoyed an All-American season in 2024 as a sophomore, started all 72 games over his 2 years with Duke. Filipowski improved his overall shooting percentages and three-point percentages in his second year. In 2024, he shot 34.8% from three, 50.5% overall, and he hauled in over 8 rebounds per game. Kyle Filipowski can help an NBA team immediately. The question is, will he develop into a star or just a steady contributor? A common player comp for him is Kelly Olynyk. For more on Kyle Filipowski and all things Duke, follow and subscribe to Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay. Look, he's going to play. I don't think Kyle Filipowski is particularly exciting. I don't think he has a high ceiling, but he'll play, he'll make an impact, and he'll likely be available at 21. It's a safe pick. I don't think you can go anywhere wrong with that. A lot of y'all, and I love Khalil Ware. I don't think he's going to be available at 21, but here's a quick report on him from our Locked On Indiana host.
Khalil Ware from the Indiana Hoosiers is projected as a first-round pick, but I think he's still being underrated. I'm Jacob Goins from Locked On Hoosiers. Khalil Ware is a 7-foot, 240-pound center with a 7'7" wingspan who transferred from Oregon to Indiana for his sophomore season. He was all Big Ten second team and all Big Ten defensive team and second in the conference of double-doubles and rebounds per game. His NBA draft comparison is Jared Allen of the Cleveland Cavaliers. People are asking, can he make an immediate impact on an NBA roster? And I say because of his defense, his rebounding, and his inside shot making, he will be seeing the floor early and often for whatever NBA team takes a chance. For more on Khalil Ware and all things Indiana Hoosiers, follow and subscribe to the Locked On Hoosiers podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
I don't think he's going to be there at 21, but I do think he's a little bit of the dream for the Pelicans. And we're going to look at him. I want to play the Edey clip. I want to play the Donon Holmes clip for you in a second here too. One of the reasons I'm playing those again to give you a refresher of them. One, we've talked about them a lot. You're probably pretty familiar with the names, but it's good to get the other perspective on kind of what their comps are, what they might look like at the NBA level. It also means I can talk less in today's show, which is kind of nice. And it wouldn't, I don't anticipate the Pelicans trading up, but they've been aggressive or tried to be aggressive last year with Scoot Henderson and in other drafts when they particularly like a guy. So if there is a player they really like and they're like, we've got to get him, they have draft assets to be able to potentially move up using that future Lakers pick, using a Bucks pick, using one of their own future picks. You might be able to move up in this draft given it's considered weaker and if things break in a little bit of a weird way. So it's worth remembering these names again because you know what? Maybe the Pelicans decide Edey is their guy, that Holmes is their guy, and they want to go and get him. They might be able to do so, I think, relatively easy. So here's more on Donon Holmes, the second, who I absolutely love. The comp in this one, Naz Reid, I think is dead on, and that's the type of guy that would fit around Zion Williamson.
Donon Holmes II from Dayton decided to come back for one more go-round with the Flyers, and it paid off despite first-round buzz last season. I'm Isaac Shade from Locked On College Basketball. Holmes is a 21-year-old, 6'10", 220-pound forward with a 7'1" wingspan who was the 24 A10 Player of the Year and a consensus second-team All-American. In his electric junior year for the Flyers, Holmes averaged 20.4 points, 8.5 boards, 2.6 assists, and 2.1 blocks while shooting a career-high 38.6% from three. His biggest growth last year was on the defensive end, where he was also named the A10 Defensive Player of the Year. The bulking up that Holmes did last offseason, plus his defensive growth and improved shooting, should allow him to contribute right away at the NBA level. Player comp? Give me Naz Reid, or how about Nick Claxton? For more on Donon Holmes and all things college basketball, follow and subscribe Locked On College Basketball on YouTube and anywhere else you get podcasts.
Yeah, I think he would fit so well. I think you need another starter alongside Donon Holmes. I think he's your backup coming off the bench as a change of pace big. Makes a ton of sense. I think a lot of teams are really high on him. You know, he started canceling his draft workout, supposedly has a promise somewhere. I don't know exactly where. A lot of people have him mocked to later in the draft to the Denver Nuggets, but in our mock draft, he went really high. And there's a lot of reasons why, and you can kind of see it. Maybe that's the guy the Pelicans love. They want to trade up for him. I don't rule some of these things out. So a couple more I want to go over. We're going to kind of go rapid fire in a minute here, but here's the Zach Edey one because I think Zach Edey would be good. I think Zach Edey's going to be good, even if he's just a backup big in the NBA. Here is the Zach Edey clip.
Purdue's Zach Edey was college basketball's most dominant player the last 2 years. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten. Zach Edey is a legitimate 7'4", a sturdy 300 pounds, and he's got a wingspan of 7 feet 11 inches. He averaged 25 points, 12 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game for the Boilermakers this year, and he's the 2-time National Player of the Year. His numbers coming out of college are comparable to Shaq's at LSU, but his game is more like Yao Ming's. If this draft were 20 years ago, this kid would be the number 1 pick. There's no question about it. But today's NBA game is full of shooters of all sizes on the perimeter. The one thing Zach Edey struggles with is shooting on the perimeter. In fact, he made just 1 3-pointer in his entire college career, and that was this year against Indiana, and he banked it in garbage time. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be as curious as anybody to see how he's used in the NBA. But I clearly think there's a place for him if he goes to the right team. For more on Zach Edey and all things Big Ten, follow and subscribe to Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
He's just a dominant, productive player. I like guys like that. Go and get a guy like that. There's something to be said for that. I think Edey's going to draw double teams at the NBA level because he's so big. He's so strong. There's so much size there. That's going to take, it's a different kind of spacing. It's not the ideal kind of spacing, but he moves pretty well for a man of his size. Defenses are going to have to account for him. So 3 more names, 2 that I really like, 1 that I want to put out there. We're going to end on him as if Missi's gone, if all these other centers are gone, maybe this is the direction the Pelicans look at. I want you to hear about, though, Tyler Kolek, Marquette point guard. This is a dude who just makes like everybody better and does seem like he would fit the Pelicans. Here's the clip.
Tyler Kolek, Marquette is a bulldog and a winner who rises to the occasion time and again, and someone I want on any team. I'm Isaac Shade from Locked On College Basketball. Tyler Kolek is a 6'3", 195-pound, 23-year-old lefty point guard who was the second-team consensus All-American following up his Big East Player of the Year award the year before. While there's a lot that Kolek does well, what shines the most is his distribution. He led the nation with 7.7 assists per game this season, while, oh, by the way, scoring 15.3 points, grabbing 4.9 rebounds, and knocking down 38.8% of his threes. I am a bit concerned about his ability to defend at the next level in his size and athleticism, but you can't deny what's on tape, and I would trust him and his savvy ability to lead a second unit. Give me Andrew Nembhard and what he just did for the Pacers as a player comp. For more on Tyler Kolek and all things college basketball, follow and subscribe Locked On College Basketball on YouTube and anywhere else you get podcasts.
He's just a good dude. He mentioned Nembhard, and I think that is a good comp, but also on the Indiana Pacers, there's some TJ McConnell in him too, kind of that like gamer type of player that just elevates everyone. You want more basketball IQ? David Griffin has said that. This is the type of player that I do think would provide that for this team. And the next guy we're going to look at, Tristan da Silva, who I love. I just like both of these guys. I think one of them could be available at 21, and maybe that is a different direction that the Pelicans want to go. So here is Tristan da Silva, wing forward out of Colorado.
Tristan da Silva is taking his talents to the NBA after a great 4-year career in Boulder. I'm Kevin Borba, host of Locked On Bucks, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Tristan da Silva. Da Silva is a forward who is 23 years old and was named to 2 All Pac-12 conference teams during his career, one of which was this past season. He averaged 16 points, grabbed 5 boards, and his skill set is something that will immediately translate to the NBA because he's a lot like Kyle Anderson. He plays defense, he hits threes, and every NBA team needs that pronto. They need it by yesterday, and he could do just that. For more on Tristan da Silva and all things Colorado, follow and subscribe to Locked On Buffs on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast.
I just like that dude. He's going to contribute. He does everything well. A very high floor player, not an elite ceiling. He's a role player, 4th guy, 5th guy on a team, but that's exactly what the Pelicans need. And if you trade Brandon Ingram, there's some depth as like not a replacement, but a guy that kind of helps you with your wing depth, with your forward depth, that can pass, that can shoot, that can defend, that can set screens too. That's something I think gets lost in talking about a lot of these big men. He's a dude that I just really like. And then finally, if all of the centers are gone, if Missi for whatever reason isn't there, and I saw him linked to the Lakers at 17, which please take him, is Jonathan Mogbo. And I think that could be a reach for the Pelicans, but it's a similar-ish player to Missi, and maybe that's the direction the Pelicans want to go in.
San Francisco big man Jonathan Mogbo is an extremely high upside big thanks to his versatile skill set. I'm Andy Patton, the host of the Locked On College Basketball podcast. Mogbo is a 6'8" big man with a massive 7'2" wingspan who averaged 14.2 points, 10.1 rebounds, and 3.6 assists last year for the Dons after transferring in from Missouri State. Mogbo's tenacious rebounding and strong passing ability give him the profile of a strong connective big at the NBA level, and his athleticism and defensive intensity should lead to him performing as a two-way big. If the offense holds up, there's little doubt Mogbo can be an impactful player in the NBA with a profile similar to Denver forward Aaron Gordon, although that's the high-end comparison. For more on Jonathan Mogbo, WCC hoops, and all things college basketball, check out the Locked On College Basketball podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Worth maybe a flyer. I think 21 is way too high. This is a guy that maybe is a second round prospect. Maybe they trade back in to get him if any of the guys they like aren't there at 21, or maybe they trade out of the first round, trade back, pick up a second round pick and a future second round pick, which could be a very useful piece for this team as well. But those are some names. Let me know what you think about some of the names that we covered. What is your prediction for a Brandon Ingram trade for the draft pick at 21? Anything else that, might be Pelicans related to? Also, let me know if you like the clips. This is obviously something we can do more of, next year around draft time. There won't be many more opportunities for something like this, but shows you the power of the Locked On Podcast Network, which I think is pretty cool. Let me know if that worked for you. If it didn't, should I have just made those bigger and not been like staring at the camera the whole time? It was a little bit awkward. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Don't forget, live show whenever the Pelicans do whatever it is that they do tonight for the draft. Enjoy the draft. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to hanging out with all of y'all later in the evening. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate y'all listening, and I'll see you if you're listening to this on Wednesday, like later tonight.